Okay, hello, my friends. My name is Darren Gerdes. Today is Friday, January 31st, 2025, and this is the Daily Brief. So the hits on the oil, the depots and refineries and that kind of thing keeps coming. It's almost to the point where I'm having to check, okay, did I talk about this already? Because it seems like I did, but no, there's more hits. And so that's good news, and we're going to get into that in just a moment. So there's 1670 Russians off the battlefield. What does that mean? That's a multiple, like three, four-way tie for 20th place of highest casualties of the entire war. And it's another day of this. Today into tomorrow is how we end the month in the way that we count casualties. Another day at this rate, and you'll probably be at the highest rate of the war. If not, we're going to be just shy of the highest average daily casualties in the war. Okay, 3 tanks off the battlefield, 17 armored fighting vehicles, 33 artillery systems, and 101 vehicles and fuel tanks. Now, when we're talking about how many vehicles and fuel tanks and things along those lines, it's interesting. Andrew Perpetua put this out. He did not put out his list of how many, like how many tanks or trucks or whatever are off the battlefield and like he normally does, comparing Ukrainian to Russian. But he said this, it's adorable that people think that there are 75 to 100 videos per day. My daily routine is to finish 70 videos before breakfast or I fall behind. Like that's what he's doing in helping us understand what's going on here. So thank you to Andrew. Okay, Ukraine's Air Force reports a Shahed drone attack overnight. Keep coming, same kind of thing. Out of 102 Shahed drones launched, 59 were shot down and another 37 were suppressed by electronic warfare. Now, with that, I didn't see anything hardly. So there's almost no damage reports of a civilian building here or a school there or whatever that I could detect. So it looks like there wasn't very much damage at all from whatever remained. Okay, it's a, we already talked about that. So let's talk about the oil refineries. So Yaroslavl oil refinery attacked by Ukrainian drones. So far, the results are unclear, but locals reported explosions around the facility, and it refines 15 millions of tons of oil annually. Police have blocked off the streets 800 kilometers from Ukraine, 240 kilometers northeast of the Kremlin. That's where this place is located, this oil refinery. A little bit more about it. The locals reported the explosions in the area. Roads are blocked. This is the largest oil refinery in the northern region of Russia with processing capacity of 15 million tons of raw materials. But here's some specifics about that. Okay, the processing volume for the first half of 2024 amounted to 7.3 million tons of production of motor gasoline, 1.3 million tons, diesel fuel 1.9 million, fuel oil 2.2 million, jet fuel zero point 0.8 million. So it's a good hit on a place that is going to be useful for not just war efforts, but maybe the economy in general. Okay, let's go to the next one. Ukrainian drones struck the Lukoil refinery in Russia's Volgograd region overnight. The factory produces 14 million tons of oil annually. So the other one was 15, this is 14 million. And like they didn't destroy everything, as to my knowledge. Doesn't mean that there's 30 or 29 million tons of oil that's destroyed. It's not that, but they're hampering the production in these facilities as well as sometimes hitting fuel depots that are taking some down. Okay, Russia also claims to have downed 49 UAVs across 7 regions. So, okay, at least one drone, again, this is Volgograd, at least one drone hit the refinery, one of Russia's largest, and the facility is ablaze. Now, the local governor claims that all drones were intercepted, sure they were, and and damage was caused by falling debris because they can never take responsibility for actually being hit, even if they don't have air defense. They still have to make stuff up. Okay, now here's the headline from Reuters. Fire put out at oil refinery in Russia's Volgograd region after Ukrainian drone attack, governor says. So this doesn't tell me that the fire is actually out, but it confirms that there was a fire at least. because the governor said that it was put out. So, okay, that's how I read these things. Okay, oil flows. Now, here's the impact, and this is why this is important. Oil flows through the Russian port of Ust-Luga in the Baltic Sea seem to have dropped to zero on January 29th. This may have been caused by successful Ukrainian drone attacks. Ust-Luga handled about 20% of Russia's oil outflows last year. Flows from the port have slumped without explanation in recent weeks, according to Bloomberg. So there is some kind of impact of all these strikes on oil refineries and depots. So that's good news. They're actually doing the things that are going to reduce the fighting strength of the Russians. Okay, let's turn our attention to what's going on the battlefield. Again, it's the same pattern that we've been seeing. Ukrainian forces regained lost positions near Kharkiv and Pokrovsk, and Russian forces are recently advancing in Chasiv Yar, Donetsk, Kharkiv, and the Dnipro River, the Dnipro direction. So again, Ukrainians take back a little bit here or there, and Russians continue to advance a little bit more than what the Ukrainians were. But even though the Russians keep advancing more, it's not like there's not a massive wave of, we've just taken X number of miles of it, nothing like that generally. Okay, so it's taken Russians 2 years to advance 10 kilometers. That is 6 miles from Bakhmut to Chasiv Yar. That's not a lot of ground, and it's taken an enormous amount of time for them to be able to go through that. 2 years, and all they've done is destroy everything in their path and waste human life. After a thriving pre-war population of 13,000, the town now resembles everything Russia has ever touched, with only 600 residents somehow clinging to life. This is the Russian world. This is what Russia does, and this is unfortunate that that's what we're actually seeing here. But so I want you to understand that when I keep telling you about, the Russians are advancing here, the Russians are advancing there, the Russians are right, they're advancing, but it's not like they've just taken these like huge amounts of ground. It's really important to understand that they're very limited in where they are. Yes, they're advancing, but they've been very limited. Okay, let's switch our attention to this. The North Koreans are being pulled from Kursk. What's going on with that? So we don't exactly know, but they have been pulled back by the Russian military. North Korean soldiers in Russia were pulled from the front lines in Kursk after facing heavy losses, the New York Times reported, citing anonymous Ukrainian and U.S. officials. So the report comes a week after some Western officials estimated that around 4,000 of the 11,000 North Korean soldiers believed to have been sent to Russia late last year may have been killed or wounded or captured or have gone missing. And so now, there's different reports depending on who you're reading, and they'll say either that the North Koreans are very disciplined, and they do tend to be very disciplined soldiers. They'll just rush across a minefield like just because they've been ordered to, and I mean a minefield, right? And they'll ignore artillery fire and they'll ignore drones to their detriment. So that's a kind of a bad thing if they want to survive, but they'll do it. I mean, they're disciplined in that sense. But then there's other reports that there's lack of coordination. And I think the lack of coordination isn't lack of coordination within the North Koreans, but between the North Koreans and the Russians, how they can work together. And so maybe they're just debriefing lessons learned. I don't know exactly what they're doing, but that's the story here. Okay, let's turn our attention to some other issues. So the Ukraine is to ratify an agreement with the UK, a £2 billion agreement for air defense and repair bases. The government will submit a bill to the parliament for the ratification of the framework agreement, which will provide funding for air defense systems and missile procurement. So I can't imagine that there's any way that they're not going to ratify that particular agreement. That's another £2 billion. And then yesterday, Sweden announced a massive $1.2 billion aid package for Ukraine, anchoring Ukraine aid for 2025. And so if you have multiple parties doing this, it adds up over time. And that's how Ukraine is actually in a pretty stable position financially with this. Even if something went south with the Americans, with the Trump administration, Ukraine could still survive for a good good bit of time. So there's 90 million that will go directly to funding Ukraine long-range missiles and drone productions. In total, roughly 500 million will support domestic Ukrainian defense production. Okay, so that's where that is. Thank you to the UK. Thank you to Sweden. It's that's awesome. Okay, now I saw this, and I'm not showing the video, but you know my love of drones. The 414th Strike Drone Regiment, Birds of Magyar, released footage on how they repelled a Russian mechanized attack. So these are like armored vehicles, tanks, that kind of thing, coming down the road. The video shows how one by one Russian armored vehicles are being destroyed. And here's this column, and they're just, I'm not showing you the actual video itself, but they're just, yeah, it's one after another after another. That drones can do this to armored vehicles is just fascinating to my mind. So that's where I am. Okay. Last little bit, we'll end with Darth Putin. TASS was reporting, this was kind of funny. TASS was reporting a conflict with Ukraine will end in a month if or a month or two, if Kyiv is out of ammunition, Russian President Vladimir Putin said. Okay. Darth Putin said it would end today if I stopped invading. Okay, well that's obvious. But he said it's hardly a great sign that it would take us 2 months to beat an army that's out of ammunition. It's a great point. All right, my friends, that's all that I have here. Thank you for the time. Thank you for the likes and the shares and the subscribes. And thank you for being the kind of person that cares about Ukraine.